Hey guys, tonight we begin with a whisper from the past, a tale so ordinary it's almost absurd, the daily routine of a castle guard in the 13th century. You might think guarding a castle sounds thrilling, knights clashing, sieges raging, heroic last stands. But here's the irony. Most days it was about as exciting as watching moss grow on a stone wall. Yet there's something strangely captivating about the monotony, the small rituals, the forgotten quirks of a life spent guarding a fortress. So settle in, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum, and let's step into a world where time moves slowly and the night is long. If you enjoy this kind of thing, maybe like and subscribe, but only if you feel like it. Now, you wake up in medieval Europe in the year 1267 on a crisp spring morning. You're a castle guard in a modest stone fortress perched on a hill in the English countryside. This isn't one of those grand storybook castles with soaring towers and banners snapping in the wind. No, it's a practical, slightly drafty keep, home to a minor lord who spends more time fussing over his falcons than his fortifications. Your bed is a straw pallet in the guard room, tucked near a fireplace that's more smoke than warmth. The air carries the scent of damp wool, yesterday's stew, and a faint whiff of mildew from the walls. You roll out of your pallet, joints creaking like an old cart. Your chainmail hauberk clinks as you pull it on, its 30 pounds settling onto your shoulders like a grudge. It's cold, heavy, and feels like wearing a net of iron coins. Your mother told you to become a scribe. Quills and parchment, she said, not swords and boredom. But you wanted to be a man-at-arms, a figure of valour. Now scratching a flea bite and yawning, you're wondering if she had a point. You tug on your boots, which are worn thin at the soles, and grab your halberd, a long pole topped with an axe blade and a spike, more a ceremonial stick than a weapon of war. You head out, hoping the kitchen boys saved you some bread. Your first task is the morning patrol, so you climb the narrow spiral staircase to the ramparts. Each step is uneven, worn smooth by centuries of boots, and the stone is cool under your hand. You emerge onto the wall, and the view hits you like a quiet gift. Rolling green hills stretch out, cloaked in mist that curls like a sleeping cat. Sheep bleat faintly in the distance, and the air smells of dew and earth. It's the one perk of this job, this moment of peace before the day grinds on. You're supposed to be scanning for threats, bandits, rival lords, or God forbid a French invasion. But let's be honest, the last threat was a fox that stole a chicken and caused a week's worth of gossip. The real enemy up here is boredom, creeping in like the damp. You pace the ramparts, halberd resting on your shoulder, its weight a familiar ache. Your helmet, slightly too big, slips over one eyebrow, and you nudge it back with a sigh. Thomas, the other guard on duty, is already at his post, leaning against the parapet. He's griping about his blisters again, his voice a low grumble. "Feet like soggy turnips," he says, shaking his head. You nod, not because you agree, but because it's easier than talking. Thomas is always complaining. Blisters, the weather, the pottage. You've learned to let his words drift past like clouds. The irony of your vigilance isn't lost on you. You're trained to expect siege engines and armies, but the most action you've seen was a drunken poacher who tried to climb the wall for a bet and ended up face first in the moat. Still, you do your job. You scan the horizon, squinting into the rising sun. The light paints the hills gold, and for a moment you forget the itch of your chainmail and the gnawing in your stomach. You're not a knight, not a hero, just a man with a halberd, standing on a wall, keeping the world at bay. You pause to adjust your cloak, which is fraying at the edges but still keeps the chill off. The castle below is starting to stir. A servant trudges across the courtyard with a bucket, and the blacksmith's hammer rings faintly. You wonder if the Lord is awake yet, probably fussing over his birds while you're up here counting crows. You glance at Thomas, who's now carving something into the parapet with his knife, probably his initials, as if anyone will care in 100 years. You shake your head, a faint smile tugging at your lips. This is your life, cold mornings, heavy armor, and Thomas's endless complaints. The sun climbs higher, warming your face. You shift your weight, trying to ease the ache in your legs. Your stomach growls, and you think of the kitchen, where the cook might be stirring a pot of pottage. It's not much, just barley, maybe some peas, and a prayer for flavour. But it's food, and you're not picky. You've heard tales of feasts in great halls, with roasted boar and spiced wine, but that's for lords and knights, not for you. You get bread, ale, and a corner to sleep in. It's enough, you tell yourself, though you dream of boots that don't leak. You make another circuit of the ramparts, your boots scuffing the stone. The mist is burning off now, revealing more of the countryside. A cart rumbles along the distant road, probably a farmer headed to market. You watch it for a while, half expecting it to sprout siege ladders, but it's just turnips as always. You chuckle at the thought, turnips, the true scourge of the realm. The morning is quiet, save for the rustle of leaves and the occasional squawk of a rook. You lean against the parapet, letting the stillness settle over you. It's not glory, not adventure, but it's yours. This wall, this view, this fleeting moment of peace. As the sun clears the hills, you feel the weight of the day ahead. There'll be more patrols, hours at the gatehouse, and probably Thomas whining about something new. But for now, you're just a guard on a wall, watching the world wake up. The castle stands, the horizon is clear, and the morning is yours. You take a deep breath, adjust your helmet one last time, and keep walking. You're back in the courtyard now, stationed by the gatehouse of this modest 13th century castle, the year still 1267. The sun is high, casting short shadows across the packed earth, and the air hums with the quiet bustle of a fortress going about its day. Your chainmail hauberk, all 30 pounds of it, is starting to feel like a personal vendetta against your shoulders. It chafes, it's hot, and it smells faintly of rust and sweat. You shift your weight, trying to ease the ache in your legs, and adjust your helmet, which insists on slipping over one eyebrow like a drunkard's cap. You're supposed to look imposing, a stalwart guardian of the realm, but you suspect you look more like a man who regrets not listening to his mother's advice to become a monk. Your job at the gatehouse is to check anyone entering or leaving the castle, a task that sounds important until you realise it's mostly about eyeing turnips and dodging stray dogs. The courtyard is alive now. Servants haul firewood, a boy lugs a bucket of water from the well, and a pair of washerwomen trade gossip about the Lord's new steward, whose laugh, they say, sounds like a goose caught in a gate. You catch a snippet of their chatter and stifle a smirk. It's the most entertainment you've had all morning. A peddler approaches, his cart creaking under a load of vegetables and what he claims are sausages, though they look suspiciously like they've seen better days. "Fine wares for my lord," he shouts, as if the lord himself is going to barter for wilted cabbages. You step forward, halberd in hand, and give the cart a cursory inspection. It's less about finding weapons and more about making sure he's not smuggling bad poetry or, worse, spoiled meat. You poke at a sack of turnips, which seem to be the castle's unofficial mascot, and wave him through. He tosses you an apple as thanks, mealy, naturally, because nothing in your life is ever crisp. You bite into it anyway, chewing slowly as you watch him trundle into the courtyard. Standing by the gatehouse, you're a fixture, like the well or the Lord's ridiculous boar-shaped weather vane. Your halberd is propped against the wall, less a weapon and more a prop to make you look official. You try to stand tall, to channel the gravitas of a knight, but knights get squires and glory, while you get blisters and a tunic that smells like it's been through a crusade. The sun beats down and you're sweating now, the chainmail clinging to your skin like a jealous lover. You wonder, not for the first time, who thought metal shirts were a good idea. The castle's rhythm is predictable. A stray dog sniffs at your boots, decides you're not worth its time, and wanders off. A cart driver haggles with a servant over a barrel of ale, his voice carrying across the courtyard. You catch sight of Thomas, your fellow guard, ambling over from the stables, his face set in its usual scowl. "Feet still like turnips?" you ask, and he grunts, offering you a swig from his flask. It's ale, thin and sour, but you take it anyway. "To surviving another day," he says, with that grim humour only a guard can muster. You clink imaginary goblets and drink, the taste lingering like a bad decision. Your stomach growls, and you think of the kitchen, where the cook is probably stirring a pot of pottage. It's the answer to every problem in this castle. Hungry? Pottage? Cold? Pottage? Existential dread? Have some more pottage. It's a stew of barley, peas, and whatever else is lying around, maybe an onion if the cook's feeling generous. You're not picky, you can't afford to be. You've heard tales of feasts with roasted swan and spiced wine, but those are for the Lord's table, not yours. You get bread, ale, and the occasional apple, and you're grateful for it, even if the apple's mealy. The afternoon looms, and you know you'll be back on the ramparts soon, staring at the same hills, counting the same crows. For now, though, you're rooted here, watching the world pass through the gate. A girl chases a chicken across the courtyard, her laughter sharp and bright. The blacksmith's hammer rings out, steady as a heartbeat. You adjust your helmet again, wishing for a breeze to cut through the heat. This is your life, standing, watching, waiting. It's not the epic tale you dreamed of as a boy, but there's a strange comfort in it. The castle keeps turning, the turnips keep rolling in, and you keep standing. You glance at the boar weather vane, its snout pointing north, and wonder if it's mocking you. Probably. The afternoon sun hangs heavy in the sky, a lazy orb casting warmth across the English countryside in 1267. You're back on the ramparts of this modest castle, a stone fortress that's more practical than princely, home to a lord more enamoured with his falcons than his defences. Your chainmail hauberk, all 30 pounds of it, clings to your shoulders like a grudge, its iron links chafing through your tunic. You shift your weight, trying to ease the ache in your legs, and adjust your helmet, which as always slips over one eyebrow like it's mocking your attempt at dignity. You're a castle guard, not a knight, not a hero, just a man with a crossbow slung over your shoulder, watching a world that refuses to stir. Your task is to keep an eye on the dusty road winding through the fields below. It's a simple enough job. Stand, watch, report anything suspicious. The crossbow, heavy and unloaded, is more for show than use. Loading it takes ages and the quarrels are pricey, so you only bother if there's real trouble. Spoiler, there never is. The most exciting thing you've seen today is a hawk circling overhead, its sharp eyes probably judging your life choices as harshly as you do. You squint down the road, where a lone cart trundles along, likely carrying more turnips, because what else would it be? This is 13th century England, where turnips are practically currency. The fields stretch out, dotted with peasants bent over like question marks, toiling in the mud. You feel a twinge of guilt. Your life isn't glamorous, your boots leak, your back aches, and your diet is pottage with a side of pottage. But at least you're not out there, praying the harvest doesn't fail. You're fed, housed, and occasionally handed a coin or two, which you hoard for the day. You might afford a cloak that doesn't smell like mildew. It's not much, but it's enough, you tell yourself, though your dreams sometimes drift to a life with fewer fleas and better ale. The ramparts are quiet, save for the rustle of leaves and the distant bleat of sheep. You pace slowly, your boots scuffing the worn stone, the crossbow bouncing lightly against your back. The castle's banner flaps lazily above, its embroidered boar with an absurdly large snout looking like it was designed by a child with a grudge against heraldry. You smirk, then catch yourself. Smirking isn't very guard-like. You straighten up, trying to look vigilant, but your mind wanders. It always does during the long afternoon watch, when time stretches like dough in the baker's hands. You think of the stories you've heard, tales spun by travellers, or the older guards over watery ale. Dragons in the Welsh hills, saints wrestling demons, lands across the sea where the sun never sets. You're not sure you believe them. Dragons sound like the kind of thing someone made up after too much mead, but they're a welcome distraction from the ache in your legs. You try counting the stones in the wall, a game to keep your eyes open, but you lose track around 52. Numbers were never your strength. That's why you're here, not scribbling in a monastery like your brother. The sun creeps across the sky, and you're sweating now, the chainmail trapping heat like a baker's oven. You tug at your collar, wishing for a breeze, but the air is still, thick with the scent of dust and grass. You hum a tune, a half-remembered ballad about a knight who loved a lady and got himself skewered for it. Romantic, sure, but you'd rather not die for love, or anything else for that matter. You glance at the road again, empty now except for a lone figure, probably a shepherd, trudging along with a staff. No siege engines, no bandits, just another day in a world that's stubbornly peaceful. You pause by a parapet, leaning against the cool stone. The castle below is a hive of small activities. A servant sweeps the courtyard, a boy chases a chicken, the blacksmith's hammer rings like a metronome. You wonder what the Lord's doing, probably stroking his falcon's feathers and muttering about their diets. You've never spoken to him, not directly, but you've seen him ride out with his entourage, all pomp and bright cloaks. You're just the man on the wall, invisible until something goes wrong, which it won't, because it never does. Your stomach growls, reminding you of the pottage waiting in the kitchen. It's the same every day. Barley, peas, maybe a carrot if the cook's feeling generous, but you're already looking forward to it. You're not picky. Hunger has a way of making even mush taste like a feast. You think of the Lord's table, laden with roasted meats and spiced wine, and push the thought away. Envy's a useless thing, and besides, you've got a job to do. You shift your crossbow, adjust your helmet again, and resume your slow march along the ramparts. A rook lands nearby, its black eyes glinting as it cocks its head. You stare at each other, two creatures equally bored by this endless afternoon. Anything interesting? You mutter, half expecting it to answer. It doesn't, of course, just flaps off with a squawk, leaving you alone again. You chuckle, the sound soft in the quiet air. This is your life, pacing, watching, talking to birds. It's not the epic tale you imagined as a boy when you dreamed of wielding a sword and winning glory. But there's a rhythm to it, a kind of peace in the monotony. The castle stands, the road stays empty, and the world keeps turning. The sun dips lower, painting the hills in shades of amber. You've got hours left on this watch, and your legs are starting to feel like they're staging a quiet rebellion. You stomp your feet, trying to keep the blood moving, and think of Thomas, your fellow guard, probably napping in the guard room by now. He's got the right idea, you think, though you'd never admit it. You glance at the boar banner again, its snout pointing west, and wonder if it's laughing at you. Probably. You take a deep breath, the air warm and heavy, and keep walking. The afternoon stretches on, but you're used to it by now. This slow, steady grind, this life on the wall. The sun has slipped below the horizon, and the English countryside of 1267 is cloaked in dusk. You're a guard in this modest castle, a sturdy but unremarkable fortress squatting on a hill, home to a lord who'd rather fuss over his falcons than fortify his walls. The night shift looms, the longest and coldest part of your day, and you're stationed at the keep's main entrance. Your chainmail hauberk, a 30-pound burden of iron links, clings to you like a damp grudge, its weight settling deeper as the chill creeps in. You wrap yourself in a wool cloak, its faint mildew scent a familiar companion, and take your post by the heavy oak door. Your halberd leans against the wall, less a weapon and more a prop to keep you upright through the endless hours. The castle is quiet now, its daytime bustle faded to a hush. Torches flicker along the walls, casting shadows that dance like shy ghosts. Your job is to guard the door, which sounds noble until you remember it's mostly about keeping the Lord's spoiled hunting dogs from escaping. They're fed better than you, scraps of venison while you get pottage, and they have a knack for slipping out to chase rabbits. You rattle the lock just to feel useful and settle into the door frame, your breath visible in the crisp air. The night sky is a deep velvet, pricked with stars so sharp they seem to hum. It's beautiful, in a way that makes your aching legs and itchy flea bites almost bearable. You're alone, which is both a blessing and a curse. No Thomas to grumble about his blisters, but no one to keep you awake either. The silence is heavy, broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl or the creak of a shutter in the breeze. You stomp your feet, the sound echoing softly in the empty courtyard, and tug your cloak tighter. The air smells of wood smoke and damp stone, a reminder of the guardroom's smoky fireplace you'll crawl back to at dawn. Your helmet, perpetually too big, slips again, and you nudge it back with a sigh. You're supposed to be vigilant, a sentinel against the night's dangers, but the biggest threat is your own eyelids, drooping like weary sentries. Your mind drifts, as it always does on the night shift. The older guards love their ghost stories, tales of spectral knights clanking through the halls, doomed to guard the castle for eternity. You don't believe in ghosts, not really, but when the wind moans through the arrow slits, it's easy to imagine a chainmailed spirit lurking just out of sight. You chuckle, the sound swallowed by the dark. The only spirits here are in the Lord's wine cellar, locked away where you'll never taste them. You think of the ale in Thomas's flask instead, sour, watery, but better than nothing. Too bad he's snoring in the guardroom by now, leaving you to face the night alone. You pace a little, boots scuffing the flagstones to keep the blood moving. The castle feels smaller at night, its walls closing in like a mother tucking you in. You check the door again, more out of habit than necessity, and glance at the courtyard. It's empty, save for a stray cat slinking past, its eyes glinting in the torchlight. You envy its freedom, its ability to slip away into the dark. You're tethered here, bound by duty and the promise of bread and a pallet. It's not much, but it's yours, a life carved from stone and routine. The stars shift slowly, marking the hours. You try to name them, a game from childhood, but you only know a few. Orion, the plough. The rest are just specks, indifferent to your vigil. You think of your life, how you ended up here, standing guard over a sleepy castle in the middle of nowhere. As a boy, you dreamed of battles, of wielding a sword like the knights in the ballads. Now, your battles are with boredom and the occasional rat skittering across the courtyard. You smile at the irony. History will sing of kings and crusades, but you're the one keeping this castle standing, one quiet night at a time. Your stomach rumbles, conjuring thoughts of tomorrow's pottage. Barley, peas, maybe a scrap of onion if the cook's in a good mood. You're not picky. Hunger makes even mush a feast. You wonder what the Lord's eating tonight. Roasted capon, probably, washed down with wine you'll never taste. You push the thought away. Envy's a useless thing, like a dull blade. You focus on the night instead, the way the air feels sharp and clean, the way the castle seems to breathe with you. It's almost peaceful if you ignore the cold seeping through your boots. A distant dog barks and you tense, hand drifting to your halberd. But it's nothing, just one of the Lord's hounds, probably dreaming of rabbits. You relax, leaning against the doorframe again. The night stretches on, endless and patient. You hum a tune, a soft ballad about a maiden and a river, but the words slip away, leaving just the melody. You're tired, bone deep, but there's a strange comfort in this moment. Just you, the stars, and the weight of your duty. You yawn, your breath a white puff, and wonder if you'll dream of something grander than pottage. Probably not. The hours crawl by, the sky turning imperceptibly toward dawn. You check the door one last time, its iron bolts cold under your fingers. The castle stands, the night is quiet, and you're still here, a forgotten thread in the tapestry of history. You're not a knight, not a legend, just a guard doing his job. And maybe that's enough. The first hint of dawn brushes the sky, a faint blush of gold creeping over the hills of 1267 England. You're a guard in this modest castle, a stout, unpretentious fortress perched on its hill, home to a lord who'd rather tend his falcons than his ramparts. You're back on the ramparts now, your final post of the night shift, and the world feels softer, quieter, as if it's holding its breath. Your chainmail hauberk, that 30-pound beast of iron links, presses into your shoulders, its weight a familiar ache after hours of standing. Your helmet, forever too big, slips over one eyebrow, and you nudge it back with a tired sigh. The air is crisp, smelling of dew and damp stone, and your wool cloak, frayed and faintly mildewy, does little to keep out the chill. You lean against the parapet, your halberd propped nearby like a loyal if useless companion. The night has been long, cold, and uneventfully merciful. No runaway hounds, no ghostly knights, just the steady hum of a sleeping castle. The stars are fading now, giving way to a sky that's turning from indigo to a soft bruised purple. Below, the countryside stretches out, its hills cloaked in mist, the distant bleat of sheep a faint echo. You're exhausted, your legs heavy as if they've been poured from lead, but there's a quiet satisfaction in reaching this moment. Another night done, another watch survived. The castle stirs, its rhythm creeping back to life. A rooster crows, far too enthusiastic for the hour, and you wince at the sound. A servant shuffles across the courtyard, hauling a bucket, her breath visible in the chilly air. The blacksmith's hammer hasn't started yet, but it will soon, its clang marking the day's beginning. You glance at the castle's banner, that absurd boar with its comically oversized snout flapping lazily in the breeze. You've spent hours staring at it, wondering who thought it was a good idea. Probably the Lord's cousin, trying to curry favour with bad embroidery. You smirk, the expression lost in the half-light. Your thoughts drift to the guard room, where your straw pallet waits. It's not much, just a heap of straw on a wooden frame, prickly with the occasional flea. But right now, it sounds like paradise. You imagine shedding your chainmail, that clinking, chafing monster, and letting it slump to the floor like a defeated foe. Your tunic is damp with sweat and dew, and you can already feel the relief of lying down, even if the straw crinkles like a disapproving aunt. Thomas is probably already there, snoring loud enough to wake the ghosts he swears haunt the keep. You envy him just a little for stealing those extra moments of sleep. You take a slow walk along the ramparts, boots scuffing the worn stone, the crossbow still slung over your shoulder. It's unloaded, as always. Quarrels are too costly to waste on a quiet night like this. The horizon is clear, no bandits or armies lurking, just the same rolling hills you've watched for years. You think of the irony. You're trained for sieges, for heroic stands against impossible odds, but your battles are with boredom, with the cold, with the ache in your feet. The last threat was a poacher who fell into the moat, too drunk to climb. History won't sing of you, but it won't sing of him either, so maybe you're even. Your stomach growls, conjuring thoughts of the kitchen and its inevitable pottage. Barley, peas, maybe a scrap of carrot if the cook's feeling generous. It's not a feast, but it's food, and you're not one to complain. You've heard tales of the Lord's table, laden with roasted capon and spiced wine, but that's a world away from yours. You get bread, ale, and the occasional mealy apple, and you're grateful for it, fleas and all. You wonder if the kitchen boy remembered to save you some bread this time. Probably not. He's got a talent for forgetting. The sky brightens, the gold spreading like spilled honey. You pause, leaning on your halberd, and take in the view. It's the one gift this job gives you. These moments when the world feels vast and still, when you're just a man on a wall, watching the day begin. You think of your life, how it's not the epic you imagined as a boy, all swords and glory. You're no knight, no bard's hero, just a guard who keeps the castle standing through countless quiet nights. And yet there's a strange pride in that. The kings and crusaders get the songs, but you're the heartbeat, steady and unremarked, holding this place together. You make one last circuit of the ramparts, the stone cool under your boots. A rook lands nearby, its black eyes glinting as it studies you. You're late, you mutter, half smiling, and it flaps off with a squawk. The castle is waking now, more servants, more noise, the day creeping in. Your shift is almost over, and you can feel the weight of sleep pulling at you. You head down the spiral staircase, each step a small victory, and reach the guard room. Thomas is there, snoring as predicted, sprawled on his pallet like a fallen log. You ease off your chainmail, the links clinking softly, and collapse onto your own bed. The straw crinkles, a flea bites, but you're too tired to care. You close your eyes, the world fading to a soft hum. Tomorrow you'll do it all again. Patrol, stand, watch, wait. It's not the life you dreamed of, but it's yours, woven into the stones of this castle. The sun rises, the boar banner flaps, and you drift off, wondering if you'll dream of something grander than pottage. Probably not. But as sleep takes you, you feel the quiet truth. You're part of the story, not the loud part, not the glorious part, but the steady pulse that keeps the walls standing. And maybe that's enough. And so, dear listener, the guard's day ends, as yours should too. Let the world fade, let the worries slip away. The castle stands, the night is quiet, and sleep is calling. Rest now, and dream of stone walls and starlit skies. Good night. You wake up in medieval Europe, sometime in the 13th century, in a world that feels both foreign and familiar, like a half-remembered dream. The air is cool, heavy with the damp promise of morning dew, and the faint smell of wood smoke curls through the room. You're lying on a straw-stuffed mattress, its prickly contents shifting beneath you as you stir. The blanket, a coarse weave of wool, scratches against your skin, but it's warm enough to keep the chill at bay. You're not a knight clad in gleaming armour, not a peasant bent over in the fields, nor a merchant with a purse full of clinking coins. You are the miller, and your world is one of grinding stones, rushing water, and the soft, ever-present dust of flour. Your home is the mill itself, a sturdy, timber-framed structure perched beside a sluggish stream that gurgles just outside. The building creaks as it settles, its wooden bones groaning under the weight of years. The water wheel, just beyond the wall, thumps rhythmically, already turning as if it knows the day's work before you do. It's a sound you've grown used to, a low, hypnotic hum that's as much a part of you as your own heartbeat. You swing your legs over the edge of the mattress, the packed earth floor cool beneath your bare feet. You pull on a rough wool tunic, its fibers catching on your calloused hands, and a pair of hose that have seen better days. They're practical, though, built for a life spent hauling sacks and dodging flour clouds. As you stretch, a faint ache lingers in your shoulders from yesterday's labour. The mill is your kingdom, but it's a demanding one. You glance around the small loft where you sleep, a cramped space tucked under the mill's slanted roof. A narrow window, little more than a slit in the wall, lets in a sliver of grey dawn light. Through it, you can see the stream, its surface rippling like liquid silver, and the water wheel, its paddles slick with moss. The wheel's motion is relentless, driven by the stream's steady flow, and it sets the pace for your day. You smile faintly, thinking of how the village depends on that wheel, on you, to keep their bread on the table. Yet for all their need, they don't exactly love you. You descend the creaky ladder to the mill's main room, each step a familiar ritual. The air down here is thicker, laced with the nutty, slightly sweet scent of ground wheat. Flour dust hangs in the air, catching the light like a faint mist. It's a world of soft edges, where everything seems dusted with a fine white powder. Your hands, your clothes, even your thoughts feel coated in it sometimes. The millstone, a massive circle of grooved granite, dominates the room. It's already turning, its low rumble filling the space with a sound that's both soothing and insistent. You check the wooden gears that connect the wheel to the stone, running your fingers along their worn edges. They're solid for now, though one cog has a slight wobble. You'll need to fix it soon, but not today. Today, there's grain to grind. You pause by the door, looking out at the village beyond. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, and the faint cluck of chickens drifts on the breeze. The village is waking, just as you are, but you're already a step ahead. The miller's day starts early because hunger doesn't wait. You think about the irony of your position. Everyone needs you, yet half the village whispers that you're a cheat. They mutter, accusing you of skimming extra flour from their sacks. You shake your head, a dry chuckle escaping your lips. A pinch here, a handful there. It's just the cost of doing business, isn't it? Besides, they'd be lost without you. No miller, no flour, no bread. And a village without bread is a village on edge. You step outside briefly, feeling the cool air on your face. The stream burbles beside the mill, its surface flecked with leaves and the occasional darting fish. You check the water wheel, running your hand along its weathered wood. It's holding up, though the axles creak more than they used to. Maintenance is a constant battle, but you've learned to live with it. The wheel turns, the stones grind, and the village eats. That's the deal. You head back inside, the flour dust settling on your shoulders like a second skin. The day's first customers will arrive soon. Farmers with their sacks of barley, bakers demanding fine wheat, maybe even a widow with a pitiful handful of rye. You'll grind for them all, taking your toll, keeping the balance. As you prepare the hopper, pouring in a small pile of grain to test the stones, you feel a strange pride. The miller's life isn't glamorous. No one writes songs about you, no one carves your name into stone. But you're the one who keeps the village alive, the one who turns their harvest into sustenance. You smirk, thinking of another old saying, "The miller's hands are never clean." Yours are already dusted white, and the day's barely begun. Maybe there's truth to the rumours after all. You laugh softly, the sound swallowed by the millstone's steady hum, and get to work. The wheel keeps turning, and so do you. You stand in the heart of the mill, the air thick with the faint nutty scent of grain and the ever-present haze of flour dust. It's morning, and the sun has just begun to creep above the horizon, casting slanted beams through the small, unglazed window of your timber-framed mill. The light catches the floating particles, turning them into a soft, shimmering mist, like a gentle snow that never settles. The millstone, a massive circle of grooved granite, rumbles steadily below the wooden hopper, its low, rhythmic crunch a soothing constant in your world. The water wheel outside groans and thumps, driven by the sluggish stream, its paddles slick with moss and river water. You're the miller, and this is where your day begins in earnest. Not with fanfare, but with the quiet, relentless grind of stone on grain. You check the wooden gears that connect the water wheel to the millstone, running your calloused fingers along their worn, smooth edges. They're sturdy, though one cog has a slight wobble, a reminder of the endless maintenance that keeps your mill alive. You'll deal with it later. Maybe. For now, the mechanism holds, and the stones keep turning. You adjust the hopper, a funnel-shaped wooden box suspended above the millstone, ensuring the grain will feed evenly into the grind. Too fast, and the flour comes out coarse. Too slow, and you'll be here all day. It's a delicate balance, one you've learned through years of dusty trial and error. The first customer arrives before the sun's fully up, his boots crunching on the path outside. It's a farmer, red-faced and smelling faintly of hay and sweat, his tunic patched at the elbows. He drops a heavy sack of barley at your door with a thud that sends a small cloud of dust into the air. "Mind you don't take too much toll, miller," he says, his tone half joking, half sharp, his eyes narrowing as he wipes his brow. You give him a nod, your face a mask of practiced innocence, and heave the sack onto your shoulder. The toll, your payment for grinding, is a fraction of the grain, maybe a 16th, sometimes an 1/8 if you're feeling bold or the farmer's not paying attention. It's the miller's prerogative, a custom as old as the mill itself, though it earns you no love from the village. You carry the sack to the hopper, the coarse weave of the burlap rough against your hands. With a practiced motion, you untie the knot and pour the barley in, the grains rattling like a soft rain as they spill into the wooden chute. The millstone takes over, grinding the barley into coarse flour, the sound a steady, hypnotic crunch that fills the room. You watch the flour collect in the trough below, a pale, powdery pile that grows with each turn of the stone. It's mesmerizing in a way the raw grain transforms into something that will feed a family, maybe even the Lord's household. You're not just grinding grain, you're grinding life itself, though you'd never say something so lofty out loud. It'd sound ridiculous, and besides, the village already thinks you're too full of yourself. Another customer arrives, a baker this time, his apron stained with yesterday's dough and his hands flour dusted, though not as much as yours. He's here for wheat, fine ground for the Lord's table, not the coarse stuff the peasants eat. "Make it quick, miller," he says, impatient as always. You adjust the millstone, tightening the gap between the stones to produce a smoother, finer flour. It's more work, and the stones wear faster this way, but you charge a bit extra for the trouble. The baker doesn't blink. He knows the Lord's steward will pay, and pay well, for bread that's soft and white. You pour his wheat into the hopper, and the millstone hums, turning golden kernels into a fine, pale powder that drifts like a gentle fog. As you work, you overhear the baker muttering about a peddler who passed through yesterday, swearing the king's raising taxes again. You file that away, not because you care about the king's coffers, but because information is currency in a village. The mill is a crossroads, a place where everyone comes eventually, and you hear it all. Taxes, scandals, lost cows, secret trysts. You don't gossip, not openly, but you listen. A miller who doesn't know the village's pulse is a miller who doesn't last. The morning wears on, and the mill grows busier. A widow arrives with a small sack of rye, barely enough for a single loaf. Her hands tremble as she hands it over, her eyes tired and sad. You wave off her offer to pay the toll. Some days, you're not as heartless as the village thinks. "No charge," you say softly, and she nods, grateful but too proud to say it. You grind her rye carefully, making sure every grain is used. It's a small act, but it matters. The millstone keeps turning, and the flour piles up, a quiet promise of sustenance. You pause for a moment, wiping your hands on your apron, leaving white streaks on the already dusty fabric. The mill is warm now, the air heavy with the scent of flour and the faint creak of wood. You glance out the window where the stream glitters under the rising sun. The water wheel keeps its steady pace, unhurried, unyielding. You think about the irony of your trade. The village needs you, depends on you, yet they watch you like hawks, suspicious of every handful you take. They say the miller's hands are never clean, they say, and you smile to yourself, your hands indeed dusted white. Maybe they're right, but you're the one keeping their bellies full. You turn back to the hopper, ready for the next sack, the next customer, the next turn of the wheel. The morning grind goes on, steady and sure, just like you. It's mid-morning now, and the mill hums with a quiet energy, its air thick with flour dust that dances in the soft light streaming through the window. The millstone's steady rumble is your companion, a low, soothing drone that anchors the chaos of the day. Outside, the water wheel turns with its endless creaking rhythm, driven by the stream's gentle flow. You're the miller, standing at the heart of the village. Not the church with its solemn bells, not the Lord's manor with its high walls, but the mill. Everyone needs bread, and bread needs flour, and flour needs you. The village's pulse beats through your mill, and you feel it in every sack of grain, every whispered conversation, every wary glance. The stream of customers has grown steady now, their footsteps a soft patter on the packed earth path outside. A farmer's wife arrives, her apron patched and her hands rough from years of work. She sets a sack of wheat on the floor, its weight sending a small puff of dust into the air. "For the family," she says simply, her voice tired but firm. You nod, heaving the sack to the hopper. As you pour the golden kernels, the millstone takes over, grinding them into a fine, pale flour that collects in the trough below. The woman watches closely, her eyes sharp, counting every grain as if you might spirit some away. You don't, not this time. She's too watchful, and besides, you know her family's had a lean year. You take the standard toll, a 16th, and she seems satisfied, though she doesn't smile. She never does. Next comes a baker, his round face flushed from the heat of his ovens. His apron is a map of stains, dough, ash, and a smear of something that might be blackberry jam. He's here for barley flour, coarse and hearty, for the dark loaves the peasants favour. "Quick as you can, miller," he says, tapping his foot. You adjust the millstone's gap to let the grains pass through more roughly, saving wear on the stones. The baker doesn't care about finesse. He wants quantity, and you're happy to oblige. As you pour his barley into the hopper, he leans against the wall, wiping his brow and launching into a tale about a peddler who passed through yesterday. "Swears the king's doubling the hearth tax," he grumbles, "as if we've got coin to spare." You nod, saying little, but you store the tidbit away. Taxes mean grumbling, grumbling means unrest, and unrest means you'll hear more when the next customer comes. The mill is more than a place of work. It's a crossroads, a gathering point where the village's secrets spill out. You don't seek them out, but they find you. The farmer's wife mentioned a neighbour's cow that wandered off. Stolen, she thinks, though she won't say it outright. The baker mutters about a tavern brawl last night, something about a blacksmith and a merchant's son. You listen, your face neutral as you sweep stray grains from the floor. A miller who doesn't know the village's undercurrents is a miller who missteps, and you've survived too long for that. You're not a gossip. Gossip gets you in trouble, but you're a collector of whispers, piecing together the village's story like a mosaic. A young lad dashes in, his cheeks red from running. He's the baker's apprentice, sent to fetch more flour because the first batch wasn't enough. Master says you shorted him last time, the boy says, bold as brass, though his eyes flicker with nerves. You raise an eyebrow, a dry smile tugging at your lips. Did he now? You say, your voice calm, almost amused. You know the baker's game. Complain about the toll to keep you on your toes. You grind the boy's wheat, taking care to measure the toll exactly, and send him off with a full sack and a pat on the head. The baker will find no fault today, but you'll have a word with him later, all smiles and subtle warnings. It's a dance, this business of trust and mistrust, and you've learned the steps well. By noon there's a brief lull, and you take a moment to sit on a stool by the window, chewing a crust of bread you baked yourself. It's coarse, a bit chewy, but it's yours, made from flour you ground last week. The stream outside glitters under the midday sun, its ripples catching the light like a scattering of coins. The water wheel turns, steady and unhurried, its creak a counterpoint to the millstone's hum. You think about the village beyond, the fields ripe with wheat, the church where the priest drones on about sin, the tavern where secrets are traded over ale. They all depend on you, though they'd never admit it. The Lord eats his fine white bread because of your mill. The peasants fill their bellies with coarse loaves because of your mill. Even the priest with his holy wafers needs your flour to play his part. You're the quiet thread that binds them all. Another customer arrives, a widow with a small sack of oats, her hands trembling as she sets it down. For porridge, she says softly, her voice barely above a whisper. You grind it for free, waving off the toll with a shrug. No need, you say, and her eyes soften, though she doesn't thank you. You don't expect her to. The millstone keeps turning, and the oats become a fine, pale meal, enough to keep her going for a few days. You hand her the sack, and she shuffles out, leaving you alone with the mill's quiet rhythm. You smile to yourself, thinking of the irony. They call you a cheat, but you're not always the villain they make you out to be. Not always. The morning's work stretches on, the mill a steady heartbeat in the village's daily life. You're not just grinding grain, you're grinding time, stories, lives. The flour dust settles on your hands, your tunic, your world, and you carry on, the miller at the centre of it all, keeping the village fed, one sack at a time. The sun hangs high now, its warm light filtering through the mill's small window, painting the flour-dusted air in soft golds and ambers. The millstone hums its steady, soothing tune, a low rumble that blends with the creak of the water wheel outside, turning endlessly in the stream's gentle current. You're the miller, standing in your dusty kingdom, your hands white with flour, your tunic speckled with the morning's work. The village's pulse still beats through your mill, but the afternoon brings a shift, a slower, heavier rhythm, laced with the small troubles that always seem to creep in when the day grows warm. You're sweeping stray grains from the floor, the broom's bristles whispering against the packed earth, when a shout breaks the calm. Miller, the wheel's stuck. It's a young lad, no more than 12, his face flushed and his chest heaving from a sprint across the village. You sigh, setting the broom against the wall, and wipe your hands on your apron, leaving fresh streaks of white. Trouble, as always, picks the worst moment to arrive. You step outside, the air warm and thick with the scent of grass and river water. The stream glitters under the sun, but the water wheel is still, its paddles motionless, like a giant caught mid-stride. A thick branch, gnarled and heavy with sodden leaves, has wedged itself between the paddles, stopping the flow. You mutter under your breath about careless boys and lazier streamkeepers, though you know it's just the river's way of keeping you humble. Wading into the cold, ankle-deep water, you feel the chill bite through your worn hose. The branch is stubborn, tangled in the wheel's slats, and you tug at it, your boots slipping on the slick stones. With a final heave, it comes free, and the wheel groans back to life, spitting water and moss as it turns. You trudge back to the bank, soaked to the knees, your tunic clinging uncomfortably. The lad watches, wide-eyed, and you give him a look, half stern, half amused. "Tell your master to check the stream next time," you say, and he nods, scampering off before you can add more. Back inside, the millstone's hum has faltered, its rhythm uneven. You frown, crouching beside it to inspect the grind. The flour coming out is too coarse, gritty enough to make even the heartiest peasant loaf chewy. You run your fingers along the millstone's grooves, feeling the worn edges. They need recutting, a job that requires a skilled mason and a full day's work, time and coin you don't have to spare. You curse softly, the sound swallowed by the mill's drone. For now, you adjust the hopper to slow the grain's flow, coaxing a finer grind from the tired stones. It's a temporary fix, and you know the baker will grumble if his flour's not up to the Lord's standards. Rustic, you'll call it, with a smile that disarms complaints. It's worked before. The afternoon's troubles aren't done with you yet. A woman arrives, her face sour as curdled milk, clutching a sack of oats so tightly her knuckles are white. "I'll be watching, Miller," she says, her voice sharp as a scythe. "Every ounce I'll count." You've seen her before. She's the blacksmith's wife, known for her sharp tongue and sharper eyes. The village whispers about your tolls, and she's clearly heard them. You nod, all charm, and take her sack with a flourish. "Nothing to worry about," you say, your tone smooth as the stream outside. You grind her oats with extra care, measuring the toll precisely under her watchful gaze. The millstone turns, the oats become a fine pale meal, and you hand her the sack, heavier than she expected. She checks it, weighing it in her hands, then nods grudgingly and leaves without a word. You shake your head, a wry smile tugging at your lips. Another satisfied customer, or at least one who can't complain. The mill quiets for a moment, and you lean against the wall, catching your breath. The air is warm now, the flour dust settling like a fine veil over everything. Your hands, the floor, the wooden beams overhead. You glance at the gears again, that wobbly cog nagging at your mind. It'll hold for now, but not forever. You think about the mason, the cost of his tools, the time it'll take to carve new grooves in the stone. Coin is always tight, and the Lord's steward isn't known for generosity. You could raise your toll, just a fraction, but the village would notice. They always do. They say the miller's hands are never clean, they'd say, and you'd have to smile through their glares. Another customer arrives, this time a farmer with a sack of rye, his face lined with worry. "Heard about the tax," he mutters as you take his grain. "King's men are coming next week, they say." You nod, keeping your face neutral, but your mind turns. Taxes mean less grain to grind, leaner times for everyone, including you. You pour his rye into the hopper, the millstone grinding it into a coarse, dark flour. The farmer's still talking, something about a neighbour's field gone fallow, but you're only half listening. The village's troubles are your troubles in a way. No grain, no flour, no mill. You hand him his sack minus the toll, and he shuffles off, still muttering. The afternoon stretches on, each small trouble piling like flour in the trough. A clogged hopper, a creaking axle, a customer who lingers too long, spilling gossip you don't need. You handle them all, your hands moving with the ease of long practice, your voice calm even when your patience thins. The millstone keeps turning, the water wheel keeps creaking, and you keep the balance, as you always do. You're the miller after all, the one they need, even if they don't trust you. As the sun begins to dip, casting long shadows across the mill's floor, you sweep up the last of the stray grains, the dust swirling like a quiet storm. The troubles of the afternoon fade for now, and you turn back to your work, the mill's steady hum carrying you forward. The sun has dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky a soft bruise of purple and gold. You stand outside the mill, the day's labour settling into your bones like dust into the cracks of the millstone. The water wheel still turns, but slower now, its rhythm a low, soothing hum that blends with the chirp of crickets and the distant bark of a village dog. The air is cooler, carrying the scent of damp grass and the faint lingering warmth of flour-dusted wood. You wipe your hands on your apron, the coarse fabric streaked with the day's work, and feel the world slow down around you. This is the evening's quiet, the moment when the village exhales and you, the miller, finally catch your breath. You step back inside the mill, the door creaking on its iron hinges. The interior is dim, lit only by the faint glow of a single tallow candle flickering on a wooden table. The millstone is still, its great bulk resting like a sleeping giant. Sacks of flour, neatly stacked, line the walls, each one a small victory over the day's demands. You check them absently, running your fingers along the rough burlap, ensuring none have torn or spilled. The villagers might whisper that you short their portions, but you know the truth. Every sack is weighed with care, every scoop accounted for. Well, mostly. You smirk at the thought. A miller's got to eat after all. You settle onto a stool by the table, the wood worn smooth by years of use. Your wife, Agnes, is in the small house attached to the mill, stirring a pot of pottage over the hearth. The smell of barley, onions, and a few precious herbs drifts through the open door, comforting in its simplicity. You'll eat soon, but for now you savour the stillness. The village is quiet, its pulse slowed to a murmur. No more farmers knocking at your door, no more children darting about, no more disputes over whose grain gets ground first. Just you, the mill, and the soft creak of the water wheel outside. You lean back, the stool creaking under your weight, and let your mind wander. Being a miller is a peculiar kind of existence, neither fish nor fowl in the village's rigid hierarchy. The lord up in his manor relies on your flour to feed his household, yet he'd never invite you to his table. The peasants need you to turn their hard-won grain into something they can bake, but they eye you warily, half convinced you're cheating them. You're not quite a craftsman, not quite a merchant, but something in between. A man who lives by the rhythm of water and stone, trusted by all and loved by few. It's a lonely trade in its way, but there's a strange pride in it. Without you, the village starves. That's power of a sort, though it comes with a price. Your thoughts drift to the day's small dramas. There was the widow who argued her sack was lighter than last week's, her sharp tongue cutting through the morning's calm. You gave her an extra handful of flour to quiet her, though you're sure she'll be back tomorrow with the same complaint. Then there was the boy who nearly lost a finger to the millstone's edge, too busy gawking at the gears to mind his step. You sent him home with a stern word and a pat on the head, grateful his mother didn't come storming in after him. These are the threads of your life, woven into the fabric of the village, each one small but essential. The candle flickers, casting long shadows across the mill's walls. You think of the stories you've heard about millers of old, tales of men who made pacts with spirits to keep their wheels turning, or who hid stolen grain in secret cellars. Nonsense, of course, but you can't help but smile at the thought. If you had a secret cellar, it'd be full of nothing but cobwebs and regrets. Still, there's something almost magical about the mill at night, the way it hums with a life of its own. The water wheel's steady groan, the faint rustle of grain in the loft. It's as if the mill is whispering its own story. one you're only half privileged to hear. You rise, stretching your arms, and step outside to check the wheel one last time. The stream is low tonight, its flow gentle but steady, enough to keep the wheel turning through the night. You adjust a wooden sluice gate, the wood slick with moss, ensuring the water doesn't pool too heavily. It's a small task, but one you've done 1,000 times, a ritual that grounds you. The stars are out now, pinpricks of light in a sky so vast it makes the village feel like a speck. You wonder briefly what lies beyond this place, beyond the fields and forests, beyond the Lord's manor and the king's distant court. But the thought passes. Your world is here, in the mill, in the quiet. Back inside, you blow out the candle, the faint scent of smoke curling into the air. You make your way to the house, where Agnes has set out a wooden bowl of pottage and a chunk of coarse bread. You eat in silence, the fire crackling softly, its warmth a small comfort against the evening's chill. Agnes hums a tune, an old one you've heard 100 times, and you feel the weight of the day lift, just a little. The mill will still be there tomorrow, with its creaks and groans, its endless demands. But for now, there's only this moment, the quiet, the warmth, the simple act of being. You finish your meal and lean back in your chair, the wood creaking softly. The village is asleep, the world at rest. You think of the flour sacks waiting in the mill, the grain yet to be ground, the lives that depend on your work. It's a humble legacy, perhaps, but it's yours. And as you close your eyes, the sound of the water wheel lulls you into a dreamless sleep, the evening's quiet wrapping around you like a well-worn cloak. The night has settled over the village like a heavy quilt, the kind that muffles sound and softens edges. You sit by the hearth in your small home, the fire's glow casting a warm circle of light across the packed earth floor. The mill is silent now, save for the distant murmur of the stream, its endless song a reminder that time turns as steadily as your water wheel. You're a miller, and your day has been long, filled with the grind of stone, the weight of grain, and the quiet judgments of a village that needs you more than it likes you. But now, in this final hour, your thoughts drift not to the day just past, but to what you'll leave behind. This is the miller's legacy, a story written in flour and sweat, in the creak of wood, and the trust of a community that's never quite certain of you. You lean back in your chair, the wood groaning under your weight, and stare into the fire. The flames dance, their flicker reminding you of the countless days you've spent in the mill, coaxing life from grain. Your hands, calloused and dusted with flour, rest on your knees. They're the hands of a man who's worked hard, not for glory, but for necessity. You think of your son Thomas, asleep in the next room, his breath steady and soft. He's 12 now, old enough to help with the sacks, to learn the rhythm of the millstone. Will he take up this trade? Will he inherit the mill, its burdens, its quiet power? You're not sure. The life of a miller is steady, but it's not easy, and you wonder if he'll want it, or if he'll dream of something beyond this stream, this village, this endless cycle of grain and flour. You rise, moving quietly so as not to wake Agnes, who's dozing by the hearth, her knitting forgotten in her lap. You step outside, the night air cool against your skin, sharp with the scent of damp earth and pine. The mill looms beside you, its silhouette dark against the starlit sky. It's more than a building, this mill. It's a living thing, a partner in your life's work. Its beams are weathered, its gears worn, but it's endured, just as you have. You walk to the stream, the grass crunching softly under your boots, and stand by the water wheel. It turns slowly, each revolution a testament to the simple genius of water and wood. You smile, a dry little quirk of the lips. They call you cunning, the villagers, but if you're cunning, it's only in keeping this old beast running. Your mind wanders to the stories you've heard, the ones whispered in the village square or muttered over mugs of ale at the tavern. Millers, they say, are tricksters, skimming extra flour, hoarding wealth in secret. You shake your head. If only they knew the truth, that your wealth is measured in long hours, in the ache of your back, in the rare moments of peace like this one. But there's truth in their suspicion too. You're not a saint. A pinch here, a handful there. It's not theft, you tell yourself, just the cost of keeping the mill turning. The Lord takes his share, the church its tithe, so why shouldn't you? It's a small rebellion, one that keeps you human in a world that demands you be indispensable yet invisible. And so, the miller's day ends, as it began, with the soft creak of the wheel and the rustle of grain. Maybe you'll dream of flour-dusted hands or the river's endless song. Maybe you'll just sleep, lulled by the thought of a world that turns, slow and steady, like a millstone. If you liked this little journey, maybe leave a like or subscribe for more quiet tales. But for now, rest easy. The mill will still be there in the morning. Now let's dive into a story that's not about kings or battles or earth-shattering events, but something far smaller, and yet strangely grand in its own way. A wedding in a medieval village church, circa 1350, in the heart of a muddy little hamlet somewhere in England. It's a tale of love, or at least the medieval version of it, which often had more to do with cows and contracts than candlelit dinners. Isn't it curious how a day meant to celebrate two souls could hinge on who brought the better pig to the deal? If you enjoy drifting into the quirks of history like this, maybe like and subscribe, but only if you feel like it. No pressure. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan, and settle in. Let's wander back to a time when a wedding was less a fairy tale and more a village-wide negotiation, sealed with bread, ale, and a slightly wobbly priest. You wake up in medieval Europe, in a village so small it barely earns a name on a map. Let's call it Mudworth, a fitting title for a place where the dirt tracks masquerading as streets are perpetually damp, and your boots squelch with every step outside your wattle and daub hut. It's dawn, and the air carries the scent of wood smoke, damp hay, and the faint earthy tang of livestock stirring in their pens. Today is no ordinary day. Mudworth is alive with a quiet hum of anticipation, or as close to anticipation as a hamlet of 30 souls and a single shared plough can muster. There's a wedding at the church, a squat stone building that stands as the village's only structure, not threatening to collapse under a stiff breeze. You pull your woolen cloak tighter against the morning chill, your breath visible in the crisp air, and trudge toward the village green. The bride, Agnes, is the miller's daughter, a girl of 17 whose laugh carries across the fields like a bell. The groom, Thomas, is a blacksmith's apprentice, broad-shouldered and reserved, the sort who'd rather hammer iron into submission than string together a full sentence. Their marriage was arranged naturally because in 1350, love is a luxury, like owning a second pair of shoes or a chicken that lays eggs reliably. Agnes's father offered a dowry of 3 sheep and a sack of barley, a fortune by Mudworth standards. Thomas's family countered with a pig and a promise to repair the mill's grindstone for free. Romance, you see, is a transaction, and you can't help but smile at the thought of the village scribe, hunched over a parchment, spending more time drafting the marriage contract than Agnes and Thomas have spent actually talking. As you pass the baker's hut, a low, smoky building with a chimney that leans like it's had too much ale, you notice a small crowd. Well, a crowd by Mudworth's measure, which means 5 or 6 villagers muttering around a fire. They're discussing the wedding feast, a grand affair where the village will pool its meagre resources for a meal that might, if the stars align, include actual meat. The baker, Godwin, is a wiry man with flour-dusted hands and a scowl that suggests he's wrestling with the meaning of life itself. He's kneading dough with furious intensity, muttering, "If the ale runs dry, they'll blame me, not that fool of a brewer." You stifle a chuckle because medieval logic is like a poorly aimed arrow. Blame always finds the nearest target, deserved or not. The church bells ring, or rather, they clank, one of them cracked and sounding like a pot dropped on a stone floor. You follow the sound, your boots sinking slightly into the mud, and feel the village stirring around you. Women are sweeping their doorsteps, children are chasing a scrawny dog that's stolen a crust of bread, and an old man is leading a cow to the common pasture, muttering about the weather. It's a day of promises, of vows, and of a community pretending it's not one bad harvest away from starvation. The air feels heavier with meaning, though no one would say so aloud. Villagers are too practical for that, their lives tethered to the rhythm of planting and praying. You pass the mill, its wheel creaking as it turns in the sluggish stream, and catch a glimpse of Agnes's father, a stout man with a beard like a bramble bush. He's inspecting a cart loaded with barrels, probably the barley he's so proud of. His eyes dart toward you, or rather through you, as if he's calculating whether you're worth a nod. You're not, apparently, and he turns back to his work. The village is small enough that everyone knows everyone's business, yet large enough for petty rivalries to simmer like a pot left too long on the fire. You wonder if Agnes's father approved of Thomas or simply saw him as the best deal available, a strong pair of hands and a pig to sweeten the bargain. The green comes into view, a patchy square of grass and mud where a few villagers are already setting up for the feast. A woman named Edith, the brewer, is rolling a barrel of ale with the determination of someone who knows her reputation rests on its quality. You catch a whiff of the brew, sour, earthy, and strong enough to make your eyes water. It's not fine wine, but in Mudworth, it's liquid gold. A boy runs past carrying a bundle of firewood and nearly trips over a goose that's decided the green is its personal kingdom. The chaos is oddly soothing, a reminder that life here is messy but persistent, like the weeds that sprout between the cobbles. You pause near the church, its stone walls streaked with moss, and take in the scene. The wedding is more than a union of two people. It's a village-wide negotiation, a contract sealed with bread, ale, and a slightly wobbly priest. You can't help but wonder, will this day bring Agnes and Thomas joy, or is it just another deal, as binding and practical as the ropes that tether the village's goats? The bells clank again, calling the villagers to gather, and you feel a quiet pull to join them, to see what unfolds in this muddy, hopeful corner of the world. You stand in the churchyard now, a patchy square of grass and mud where the village of Mudworth has gathered, their murmurs blending with the rustle of leaves in the morning breeze. The church itself is a humble thing, its stone walls cloaked in moss, its wooden door warped from years of relentless rain. Inside it smells of damp earth and the faint smoky trace of incense, a rare luxury, burned only on days like this when the village pauses its toil for something resembling celebration. The villagers are trickling in, dressed in their finest, which means their usual tunics and cloaks, but scrubbed of the worst stains and patched with care. You notice a woman adjusting her wimple, the headscarf framing her face like a slightly crooked halo, muttering about the bride's dowry of 3 sheep. Gossip in Mudworth travels faster than a horse, and everyone has an opinion on whether those sheep were a generous offer or a sly insult. The priest, Father Edmund, stands by the church door, looking like a man who's been perpetually startled since the Black Death swept through a decade ago. His robe is a patchwork of faded grey, and his hands tremble slightly as he fusses with a small altar, arranging a cross and a candle that's more wax drip than flame. You suspect he became a priest because it was the only job that guaranteed a meal, however meagre. He's muttering Latin phrases to himself, his voice a low drone, and you catch a few words that sound suspiciously made up. No one seems to mind. Medieval priests are often more village oddball than holy sage, and Father Edmund fits the mould with his nervous eyes and ink-stained fingers. You smile, imagining him practicing the marriage rite last night, hoping no one notices he's forgotten half the words. Agnes arrives, escorted by her father, the miller, who's wearing a tunic that's suspiciously new, probably borrowed from a cousin in a neighbouring village. Her dress is simple, dyed a soft green with lichen, and her hair is braided with wildflowers, daisies and clover plucked from the fields, a touch of beauty in a world that rarely affords it. She moves with a quiet grace, her eyes darting to the crowd, perhaps searching for Thomas, or simply bracing for the weight of the day. Thomas is already at the church door, because medieval weddings don't happen inside the church. That's reserved for the mass afterward. The vows are exchanged in the open air, a public contract witnessed by the village, sealed under the sky as if God himself is peering down to sign the ledger. Thomas looks nervous, his broad hands fidgeting with a leather belt polished to a shine for the occasion. You wonder if he's more anxious about the vows or the fact that his new father-in-law is glaring at him like he's just stolen a sheep, not gained 3. The crowd shifts, their murmurs softening as Father Edmund clears his throat, a sound like a goose being politely strangled. He begins with a few words about duty, God, and the importance of producing heirs, which makes Agnes blush and Thomas stare intently at his boots as if they hold the secrets to a successful marriage. The vows are simple, almost stark, promises to provide, to obey, to endure, through lean harvests and long winters. You notice the villagers nodding, not out of sentiment but practicality. A marriage means a new household, more hands for the fields, and with luck, a few extra lambs come spring. It's a transaction, yes, but as Agnes and Thomas clasp hands, their fingers intertwining awkwardly, you catch a fleeting glance between them. It's brief, barely a heartbeat, but there's something soft in it, something that hints at possibility, like a seed buried in hard soil. You lean against a low stone wall, the coolness seeping through your cloak, and watch the scene unfold. The churchyard is alive with small details. A child tugging at his mother's skirt, a dog sniffing hopefully at someone's dropped crust, an old woman whispering to her neighbour about the last wedding, when the groom drank too much ale and fell into the mill pond. The air feels thick with expectation, not just for the couple, but for Mudworth itself, a village that clings to moments like this to remind itself it's more than mud and toil. Father Edmund raises his hands, signalling the start of the ceremony, and the crowd falls silent, or as silent as a group of villagers with strong opinions and stronger ale can manage. You feel the weight of the moment, not grand like a king's coronation, but vital in its smallness, a thread in the tapestry of lives woven together by necessity and hope. As the priest's voice drones on, you wonder what this day will mean for Agnes and Thomas. Will it be a contract, or something more? Something that grows in the quiet spaces between duty and survival. You follow the crowd from the churchyard to the village green, where the wedding feast is taking shape under a sky streaked with clouds. The green is little more than a muddy clearing, bordered by huts and a few scraggly trees. But today it's transformed into something almost festive. Trestle tables, wobbly and scarred from years of use, are laden with the village's best offerings. Rounds of dark bread, wedges of pale cheese, and a few boiled turnips that look like they've seen better days. The centerpiece, drawing every eye, is a roasted pig, its skin crackling and golden, a rare luxury that has the village dog circling hopefully at the edges. You overhear a whisper that it was the runt of the litter, Thomas's family's contribution to the marriage deal, but in Mudworth, meat is meat, and this pig is practically a miracle. You settle onto a bench, the wood creaking under you, and take in the scene. The ale flows freely, brewed by Edith, a woman with arms like oak branches and a reputation for making barley taste like something you drink on purpose. You accept a wooden tankard, the ale inside cloudy and warm, with a sour bite that makes your tongue curl. It's not exactly refreshing, but the villagers gulp it down, their laughter growing louder with each sip. Godwin, the baker, is still grumbling, now about the uneven fire that's making his bread loaves char on one side. "If this feast fails, they'll say it's my fault," he mutters, tossing a misshapen loaf onto the table. You smile. Medieval grudges are as predictable as the rain, and just as persistent. Agnes and Thomas sit at the head of the table, looking slightly overwhelmed, like two people who've just realised they're the centre of Mudworth's attention. Her hand rests lightly on his arm, a small gesture that feels almost defiant in a world where affection is rarely shown in public. The miller, Agnes's father, raises a tankard in a toast, his face already flushed from the ale. "To the couple," he bellows, his voice carrying over the green, and the villagers echo him, though you suspect half are toasting the pig. Father Edmund, the priest, attempts a blessing, his words slurring as he sways on his bench. You notice his tankard is suspiciously full, and you wonder how many times he's refilled it. In Mudworth, even the holiest man can't resist a good brew, and no one seems inclined to judge him for it. The feast is a patchwork of small rituals that bind this community together. A woman named Maud, her face creased like old leather, passes around a loaf of bread, breaking it into pieces for each guest. A symbol of shared fortune, though you suspect it's also a way to stretch the meal. Children dart between the tables, stealing bits of cheese and giggling, their bare feet caked in mud. An old man with a lute, its strings as worn as his voice, plays a tune that's more enthusiastic than melodic, and a few villagers attempt to dance, their steps clumsy but earnest. You watch a young couple stumble through the moves, laughing as they trip over each other's feet, and it strikes you how joy in Mudworth is a stubborn thing, blooming despite the weight of hard winters and harder work. The pig is carved, its portions doled out with care, though not without squabbles. Two cousins are arguing over who gets the ears, a delicacy that's apparently worth a heated debate. You take a bite of bread, crusty and dense, and marvel at how the village has scraped together this feast from its meagre stores. It's not grand, no one's dining on peacock or sipping spiced wine, but there's a warmth to it, a sense of defiance against the daily grind. The ale keeps flowing, the laughter grows louder, and even the dogs manage to snag a few scraps, their tails wagging like flags of victory. You lean back, the bench digging into your spine, and watch Agnes and Thomas. They're talking quietly now, their heads close, and you wonder what they're saying. Is it about the future, the fields they'll work, the children they're expected to raise? Or is it something smaller, a shared joke about the priest's wobbly blessing? The sun is climbing higher, warming the green, and the village feels alive, knit together by this moment of plenty, however humble. You feel the rhythm of Mudworth, its quarrels, its generosity, its stubborn hope, and it's enough to make you forget, just for a moment, the fragility of this world, where a bad harvest or a harsh frost could unravel everything. For now the feast unfolds, and the village eats, drinks, and dares to believe in tomorrow. You sit on the grass of Mudworth's village green, your back resting against the rough bark of an old oak as the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in soft hues of amber and slate grey. The wedding feast is winding down, its earlier clamour of laughter and clinking tankards fading into a gentle hum, like the last notes of a song carried off by the evening breeze. The trestle tables, scarred and wobbly, stand half empty now, strewn with crumbs, gnawed bones, and a few lonely turnips that even the hungriest villagers couldn't muster enthusiasm for. The roasted pig, once the pride of the feast, is reduced to a skeleton, its crackling skin long claimed by eager hands. The village dogs, bolder now, sniff around the edges, hoping for scraps, their eyes glinting in the fading light. You feel the weight of the day settling over Mudworth, a quiet satisfaction mingling with the ever-present weariness of lives bound to the land. The air is cooler now, carrying the scent of damp earth and wood smoke, with a faint trace of Edith's sour ale lingering like a memory. You pull your cloak tighter, its wool scratching against your neck, and watch the villagers drift apart, their movements slow, their voices softened by full bellies, and the creeping drowsiness of a long day. Some linger at the tables, picking at the last of the cheese, or arguing lazily over who danced the worst during the lute player's uneven performance. Others head toward their huts, their silhouettes blending into the twilight, their footsteps muffled by the muddy paths. The children, who earlier ran wild stealing bits of bread, are quieter now, some curled up in their mothers' laps, others trailing behind parents with heavy-lidded eyes. Mudworth is settling, like a fire burning low, its embers still warm but no longer fierce. Agnes and Thomas remain at the head table, their figures illuminated by the flicker of a nearby fire. They're talking quietly, their heads close, and you notice her hand resting on his, a small act that feels almost daring in a village where affection is rarely displayed so openly. Thomas, usually so reserved, is leaning toward her, his broad shoulders relaxed, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. You wonder what they're saying. Perhaps something about the sheep and barley of their marriage contract, or maybe something softer, a shared hope for the years ahead. It's a rare moment of privacy in a place where secrets are as scarce as good harvests, and you feel a pang, almost like an intruder, watching them carve out this fleeting space for themselves. Their marriage, sealed by vows and livestock, is a practical thing, but in this moment it seems to hold the promise of something more, like a seed buried in the hard earth, waiting for spring. Father Edmund, the priest, is slumped on a bench nearby, his patched robe sagging around him like a deflated sail. He's snoring gently, his tankard tipped over, a small puddle of ale soaking into the grass. You smile at the sight. His earlier blessings, delivered with a slurred earnestness, were more heartfelt than coherent, but no one seemed to mind. In Mudworth, a priest's imperfections are as familiar as the crack in the church bell, and Father Edmund's fondness for ale is a forgivable sin, especially on a day like this. You imagine him waking tomorrow, bleary-eyed, muttering about the sanctity of marriage while nursing a headache. For now, though, he's a picture of peace, his snores blending with the rustle of leaves and the distant lowing of a cow. The village green feels smaller now, the fires reduced to glowing coals, their smoke curling upward like ghosts. The lute player has packed away his instrument, its strings mercifully silent, and the dancers have retreated, their clumsy steps a memory. You notice Maud, the old woman who passed around the bread earlier, sitting alone by the fire, her hands folded in her lap. She's staring into the flames, her face lined with years of labour and loss. But there's a softness in her eyes, as if she's remembering her own wedding day, long ago, when Mudworth was perhaps a little less worn. You wonder about her story. Did she marry for love, or was it a deal struck over pigs and promises, like Agnes and Thomas? The village holds these stories in its bones, unspoken but ever present, woven into the fabric of days like this. A faint clank from the church interrupts your thoughts, the cracked bell signalling evening prayers. Most villagers ignore it, too full of ale or too tired to trudge back to the church. A few devout souls, mostly older women, shuffle toward the stone building, their wimples bobbing in the twilight. You imagine Father Edmund, if he were awake, would approve, though he'd likely stay right where he is, dreaming of sermons he'll never quite deliver. The bell's sound fades, replaced by the chirp of crickets and the occasional bark of a dog, and you feel Mudworth exhaling, its energy spent but its spirit intact. This wedding, humble as it is, has given the village a rare moment to pause, to gather, to pretend the world is kinder than it often is. You shift against the tree, the bark digging into your back, and let your eyes wander across the green. The tables are being cleared now, the last scraps gathered for tomorrow's stew, because in Mudworth, nothing goes to waste. A young boy, no older than 10, is dragging a bundle of firewood to keep the fire alive, his face set with the seriousness of someone who knows the value of warmth. A woman, perhaps his mother, calls him back, her voice gentle but firm, and he obeys, leaving the fire to dwindle. The villagers are practical, their lives shaped by the rhythm of survival. Fields to tend, animals to feed, winters to endure. Yet today, they've carved out this space for joy, however fleeting, and it feels like a small act of defiance against the grind of their days. You look back at Agnes and Thomas, still at their table, now joined by a few relatives who are laughing over some shared story. The miller, Agnes's father, is gesturing wildly, his voice carrying snippets about a sheep that once escaped and caused a village-wide chase. Thomas laughs, a low, rare sound, and Agnes covers her mouth, her eyes bright. It's a moment of lightness, and you can't help but hope it's a glimpse of what their life might hold. Not just duty and labour, but moments of warmth, of connection, however small. Their future is uncertain, tethered to the whims of weather and disease. But tonight they have this: a shared table, a village's goodwill, and a sky full of stars emerging overhead. The green is nearly empty now, the last villagers slipping away to their huts, their lanterns casting faint pools of light on the muddy paths. You rise, brushing grass from your cloak, and take one final look at Mudworth. The fires are dying, the laughter gone quiet, but the village feels alive in its stillness, its people bound by this day of vows and feasting. You walk back toward your imagined hut, the stars brightening above, and feel the weight of history settle around you. Not the grand sweep of empires, but the quiet persistence of ordinary lives, stitched together by a wedding in a village church. As you move through the darkness, you carry the image of Agnes and Thomas, their hands clasped, their future unwritten, and you wonder if love, even in 1350, might grow from something as simple as 3 sheep and a promise. The night closes in, soft and heavy, and Mudworth sleeps, its heart beating steady under the weight of tomorrow. You're back in your own time now, the hum of the fan pulling you gently from Mudworth's muddy lanes. That little village, with its church and its pig and its slightly tipsy priest, feels like a dream you half remember. But it was real once, or something like it. A moment when a community paused to mark a union, to share what little it had, to hope for something better. If you enjoyed this slow wander through the past, maybe give a like or subscribe, but only if it feels right. For now, let the stars of 1350 fade, and sleep well, knowing that history is made not just of kings, but of villages, of weddings, and of nights like this.